Models and modes of documentary. Poetic, expository, and reflexive modes will be the focus of this week's lecture. Documentary has no fixed laws and few rules. Documentary is fluidly defined. Documentary is continually evolving and changing. A quote from our textbook author, Bill Nichols: "Models are not specific to cinema, whereas modes are. Together, they provide the structural framework for most documentaries." In Chapter 6, Nichols discusses models, such as diary, biography, essay, reports, and blogs. Models come from other forms of media. Take a look at the charts on page 106 and 107 to show examples of nonfiction models. Models are the general description of the presentation method of a particular form of media. We'll focus more on modes that are distinct to documentary cinema. Models and modes often overlap, and more than one can be used. Modes help to establish and set conventions and to create expectations in the audience. Modes of documentary: expository, poetic, observational, participatory, reflexive, and performative. Expository mode is most often associated with documentary presentation, emphasizes verbal commentary and argumentative logic. And two really early examples of social issue documentaries made by the United States government: The Plow That Broke the Plains and The River. Documentarian Pare Lorenz, working in the 1930s in support of FDR's New Deal, two notable documentaries he made: The Plow That Broke the Plains and The River. Pare Lorenz was a film advisor for the U.S. Resettlement Act. He made patriotic films that established conventions in the expository mode. And you can view The Plow That Broke the Plains and The Rivers on the Modes of Documentary playlist on D2L. Poetic mode uses visual association. Rhythmic qualities are often stressed over a formal narrative structure. Other adjectives that describe poetic mode are experimental, personal, and avant-garde. And two examples of poetic mode documentaries are Baraka and Koyaanisqatsi. Created by Godfrey Reggio and scored by Philip Glass, the poetic documentaries Koyaanisqatsi, Poenisqatsi, and Nyanisqatsi make up the Satsi trilogy, poetic documentaries that look at the way humans and technologies impact the earth. And I apologize if I butchered any of those pronunciations. Please forgive me. Director Ron Frick made Baraka in 1992 and Samsara in 2011, was the cinematographer for Koyaanisqatsi. Samsara is shot in all 6 continents, 24 countries, in over 14 months. View scenes from Koyaanisqatsi, Baraka, and Samsara on the Modes of Documentary playlist on D2L. Observational mode: direct engagement with everyday life, often referred to as fly on the wall. And some pioneers of observational mode: Frederick Wiseman and Albert and David Mailses, or the Mailses brothers. View scenes from primary and high school on the Modes of Documentary playlist on D2L. Participatory mode emphasizes interaction between the filmmaker and subject through interviews, direct involvement, and often focus on historical issues. Michael Moore works in this mode often by provoking and confronting his subjects. View a scene from Michael Moore's documentary Bowling for Columbine on the Modes of Documentary playlist. Reflexive mode subverts realism by challenging its conventions. Like breaking the fourth wall in a fictional narrative, the audience can see the construction of representation in reflexive mode. Nichols says reflexive documentaries ask us to see the documentary for what it is, a construction or representation. This week's film example, Man with a Movie Camera, is the quintessential example of reflexive mode. Documentarian Marlon Riggs often worked in reflexive mode. He explored representations of blackness in media. He also explored representations of gay men of color. Sadly, he passed away from complications of AIDS in 1994. His groundbreaking documentary, Black Is, Black Ain't, looks at representations of blackness in media. In the Week 8 module on D2L, Riggs's film, Tongues on Tide, can be watched in its entirety. Performative mode rejects the notion of objectivity. It is often done from a subjective and expressive point of view. Adjectives associated with performative mode are personal, experimental, and emotional. And we have the examples of Tarnation and The Gleaners and I by Agnes Varda beneath. And there's a wonderful picture of Agnes Varda from her documentary, The Gleaners and I. Agnes Varda, born in 1928, a prolific director of fictional narratives and documentary, pioneer of the Left Bank group, along with Alain Resnais, Night and Fog director. We'll watch that documentary later in the semester. Varda is often associated with the French New Wave filmmakers. Watch the trailer for The Gleaners and I on the Modes of Documentary playlist on D2L. This week's assigned film is Man with a Movie Camera, directed by Dziga Vertov. Dziga Vertov was a very interesting and ambitious filmmaker. He wrote several manifestos rejecting the cinema of fiction and sought about to create a new way to represent truth in film that he called kino-ai, meaning film truth in Russian. You can read more about A Man with a Movie Camera in the module on D2L. I'll go over the two choices for the critical writing assignment, but be sure to read the details in the syllabus. Choice 1. Does Dziga Vertov succeed in creating a new language or method of representation in Man with a Movie Camera? Why or why not? Be sure to support your claim with outside sources and not just your personal opinion. Or, choice 2, compare and contrast Man with a Movie Camera with Koyaanisqatsi Baraka, Beaches of Agnes, or another poetic or reflexive mode documentary. Elements to consider: visual style, editing, use of music. How is your film of choice similar or different from Man with a Movie Camera? I thank you for watching, and until next time, have a productive week.